What's up, you guys? This is HJ, aka Shutter here from the Level Infinite Show on Spotify and the Level Infinite Show on YouTube. Now, today I have successfully experimented with my Dell Inspiron. It's a 153511. And you can see here that I'm on the graphics page. And what I wanted to explain to you guys today was how to increase the video memory on your integrated graphics card for your gaming. Now, some of you guys are like, well, wait a minute, this is a trick. They always tell me to go into the BIOS and always tell me to go into the actual registry and all this other crazy hoopla, and it never gets it done. Well, that part is true. It never gets it done, but this is what does. Okay, so so the answer is yes. You can't do it by those means. So in essence, those people technically are not being truthful to with integrated graphics cards. You could do them on dedicated graphics cards, but never change a registry. That one is never understood. That one. On integrated graphics cards, there's only one way you can upgrade your video memory to create a better and smooth gaming experience, and that is to actually upgrade the RAM itself. Some RAM slots, I will admit, are kind of difficult because the laptops in question only have one RAM slot. Some laptops in question are difficult because the laptops have dual RAM slots, but both RAM slots are used for both shared memory slots, meaning you have 4 gigabytes in each slot. In some cases, you might have 6 gigabytes and 2 gigabytes, depending on the manufacturer. Like I know Lenovo, the 80K9 has that model, has a 4 to 2 ratio, and they use both RAM slots to create 6. So what I did is I had an old HP that it had 2 RAM slots, like I was talking about. It used 4 and 4. And with the Dell models, I know you guys will probably be buying Dell Inspirons like crazy after this. It has a SATA port in addition to the M2, and it has 2 RAM slots. But here's the kicker. The second RAM slot is not being used because the RAM slot for the first RAM slot, the primary RAM slot, has the whole 8 gigs that the system comes with by default, which means that that second RAM slot is not in use. So I took my old RAM from out of my HP, and I actually was very scared that I would break the screen like I did on the HP, and I actually installed the RAM into the second slot. Now, when you do that, you don't panic at first because your screen's not necessarily going to get messed up if you do it carefully. What's going to happen is you're going to have about 5 to 10 seconds of dead air. So that's not your screen, that's the BIOS. The BIOS is trying to register that the RAM has been changed. Once you've done that, depending on the device, with this device, I entered the BIOS just to be careful, but I didn't have to. With some devices, you actually have to enter the BIOS and change some settings around. You might want to do some research as to which devices require that. My device does not. When I installed the RAM, it actually changed. This dedicated graphics memory was originally 0, and the shared graphics memory was originally 4. When you have 8 gigs of RAM, by default, your video memory is 0 on dedicated, and your graphics memory shared is by default is 4 because it takes up half of what the total allotted RAM actually is. So when I added in the 4 gigabyte RAM, because I could not add a full 8 due to my HP splitting it 4 and 4, I had to choose one or the other, so I just chose a random slot on the right, picked it out, put that into the Dell, and then put everything back together. And when I did that, it changed. The total thing is 12. The whole RAM on this computer now is 12. What happened is it split the second piece of RAM, the 4 gigabytes, and it took 2 gigabytes of that out of the 4 gigabytes that I added, and then allocated that to make it the shared memory 6. And then it took 128 megabytes remaining and set that aside as dedicated. Remember the magic formula. And I know this is math. You guys don't like to do math over the holidays, but remember the magic formula. Whatever the it's default RAM, and I'm gonna explain this in a math geeky kind of way. Default RAM equals the total amount of RAM. That's the numerator. Over basic. It's basically halved. So whatever your default RAM is, in order to find your video memory, your shared video memory, take the 8 or the whatever the default is. Default equals total over 2, and that halves it. So that basically means that if you had 16, your shared video memory would be 8. So for every set of RAM you have, like if you had 20, for example, I don't know anybody that has 20, that's rare, but if you have 20, for example, then you have that. You would shared video memory on your integrated graphics card would be 10, and your dedicated graphics memory does not take effect, is not applicable until you reach 12. So that's your outlier. Your dedicated will only be effective if you get to 12 or higher. Anything less than 12, it will not show any dedicated video memory in your graphics command center. It will not show anything at all. It'll just tell you, hey, you have 4 gigabytes or whatnot, and there'll be 0 dedicated. It will not kick in until after you have 12. But the general rule of thumb is that for every total, you half it, and that's how much video memory, shared graphics memory, you have on your system by default. Now this is by far the only way so far in recent history, and basically all the history really of laptops, to actually increase your video memory. And so I'm gonna do an example, and let me go grab my hard drive because I set it over here in this ugly mess of a desk that I have, just sitting over here. I'm gonna put my phone just like that. You'll see me put the hard drive in just a second. Okay, I get my hard drive in, and now my hard drive's gonna power on. Now you can see my hard drive that has all my games on it. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna search up a game. I'm gonna search up Destiny 2, and I'm pretty sure it's gonna tell me that I don't meet the video memory requirement. However, it's gonna tell me that I don't meet the video memory requirement. That's perfectly fine. That's perfectly normal. Why? Because because the dedicated graphics memory, really, it depends on your laptop. Depending on your laptop, and what graphics processor you have coupled with it. Like, you see that my graphics processor has a check mark on it for the it says all this NVIDIA and AMD stuff, and it has a check mark on it because it's an equivalent. That graphics processor is gonna absorb some of the hit that your PC is gonna take. It's supposed to. It's supposed to, at least. If it doesn't, that means you might still be stuck at 8 or something. But generally speaking, 6 gigabytes of shared graphics memory and 128 megabytes of dedicated. What it does effectively is it basically gives your device a boost towards getting to that minimum. In order to really effectively have that minimum, you need to have 16. 16 is probably the baseline that you need in order to get the full, in order to meet the full 2 gigabytes of video memory requirement for most games. That's the baseline for getting to that. Most games nowadays will take 12, and that as a supplement will give you frame increases if you lower your settings to baseline settings. But most games, to my knowledge, will need 16 gigabytes of physical RAM on your system for an integrated graphics card, coupled with an Iris Xe or an 11th gen processor or higher, typically, in order to actually physically run the game relatively smoothly. That's not always the case, because the HP laptop that I had, it had 8 gigabytes of RAM and an Iris Xe processor, and it didn't have any video memory requirements met except for the 1 gigabyte for Sea of Thieves. And I was able to run Forza Horizon 4 and a bunch of other games. They were slow to kick in, but they ran smoothly with no frame drops. So this device does have Iris Xe, but it just doesn't have the label on it. But it does have Iris Xe. But some devices can run certain games on the same graphics and on the same video memory smoother than others for some reason. I don't actually know why that is. If I had my HP working, I would show you the difference. But I actually don't know why that is. It's very strange to me because this is Iris Xe graphics, and I can get Forza to work, Forza Horizon 4 to work, but it's like it runs minimum frames, like 30 frames, and I have to have it on low resolution. At least I had to. I'm gonna test out Forza today with the new RAM installed and see if that helps any. But when I was on my HP, I had the same settings, and I could run it at 13. I think it was 1366 by 768, something like that. Like I could run it. I could run it at basically HD, and I run it at the maximum screen resolution that I could have, my PC could handle, and it ran 30 to maybe 45 frames per second. It ran really smoothly on that device using the same processor and the same video memory. So some devices might treat it a little bit differently. So you need to, like I said, do your research into your own device, because your own device will determine what kind of modifications, one, you can make. That's critical, because if you don't have an additional RAM slot, you might have to buy a whole new set of RAM, like a full-on piece of RAM instead of just the standard. And the other thing to keep in mind, I would say, is that you probably do need to also do research on the games as well, because like I said, some games, certain devices treat the games differently than others when it comes to even if they have the same settings. For some reason, I find that integrated graphics cards, even if you have the same one on a certain device, it still treats it differently for some reason. It baffles me honestly. So let's see, what was I gonna do? Oh yeah, so that's basically the whole premise of adding the memory, is so that you can get those numbers up. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think in the comments. And this is not one of those videos that I'm going to ask you to like, comment, and subscribe on. This is based upon my research, and you need to do your own research on this. So, and just so I'm clear, I'm not liable if anything happens to your PC because you failed to do research. And I'm not trying to be mean, but that's actually what I'm required to say, because I don't want to be held liable for it. But if you guys do your own research, I'm pretty sure you guys will find out more about your own laptop. And I'll leave a link in the description down below to some of the major support sites for each individual laptop brand manufacturer. I'll leave links in the description to some of the major ones, so you can do the research for yourself. That is all for me, and I'll see you guys in another video. And hopefully soon, I'll get a better version of this episode recorded for my podcast, so you guys can listen to that. And I'll have it scripted this time, so it'll be a lot more clear for you guys to understand. Thank you.